Hurry into Old Navy tomorrow and Sunday to get jeans for the whole family on sale. Just $15 for adults, $12 for kids. Plus, starting tomorrow, redeem your Super Cash to save even more at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Super Cash valid 6/3 to 6/11. Jeans valid 6/3 to 6/4. Select styles only.
Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Along with Jim Garrity of National Review, I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have a double-barreled good martini, bad martini, and crazy martini for conservatives today to round out the week. And Jim, let's start with the double-barreled good martini. We wanted to make this the good martini on Wednesday. We wanted to make this the good martini on Thursday. Finally, we can make it the good martini on Friday because of all the different speculation back and forth of was Trump actually planning to withdraw? Would there be caveats? Would it be toothless after being lobbied by Rex Tillerson and his daughter Ivanka? In the end, the president did what we thought he was going to do 48 hours earlier. Here is a series of cuts of President Trump, who actually took quite a bit of time explaining why he was doing what he was doing. First of all, the announcement.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair. And if we can, that's great. And if we can't, that's fine.
If we can't, no big. What's wrong with the Paris Climate Accord? Well, the president spent quite a bit of time on that as well.
This includes ending the implementation of the nationally determined contribution and, very importantly, the Green Climate Fund, which is costing the United States a vast fortune. Compliance with the terms of the Paris Accord and the onerous energy restrictions that is placed on the United States could cost America as much as 2.7 million lost jobs by 2025.
Yeah, but Mr. President, all the other countries are doing it, right? Well, not exactly.
I cannot in good conscience support a deal that punishes the United States, which is what it does. The world's leader in environmental protection, while imposing no meaningful obligations on the world's leading polluters. For example, under the agreement, China will be able to increase these emissions by a staggering number of years, 13. They can do whatever they want for 13 years, not us. India makes its participation contingent on receiving billions and billions and billions of dollars in foreign aid from developed countries.
So, Jim, the president did what he said he would do. He had a fairly strong economic argument for doing so, and for people who voted for him based on what he promised to do, this was a good day.
It was, Greg, and I just want to point out, early in the week, when there was the first kind of murmurs that this was the decision coming down the pike, I said, egads, the president is withdrawing from a treaty that never was sent to the Senate for ratification and that doesn't actually have any enforcement mechanisms, which doesn't really explain, there are two arguments you can make here. Either that this is there's no point in withdrawing from this because it's so inconsequential, because there's no punitive measures, no consequence for the U.S., that the U.S. could do the same approach that most other countries are going to do, which is sign their name to it, tout it, celebrate it, and then ignore it when it actually would cost them any serious economic growth. Or you can say, you know what, this whole thing is a farce, it's ridiculous, we're going to withdraw. Even if we don't take this seriously, the previous administration agreed to make giant reductions and not expect anything remotely comparable to from other countries, and that's just a bad deal for us. Whatever your thinking is, the consequences of this are not bad, and in fact it represents Trump keeping a promise, and this kind of is what you'd expect from a Republican president. And it's, I think what was really kind of fascinating was that he made this decision. And Greg, you would have, I literally, the rhetoric from his critics and from folks on the left various officials and celebrities and stuff. That was literally apocalyptic. Literally, the fate of the earth had been destroyed by Trump's decision here. I think that offers a bit of a gap between the reaction of the average American and these folks who seem to take this who see this with the fervor of an intense religious faith.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit with a couple of sound bites and a couple of quotes. Here is the report from NBC News in response to the president's decision.
Climate scientists say the warning signs are everywhere, from Montana's shrinking glaciers to Australia's bleaching Great Barrier Reef, a trend that could worsen, experts say, now that the U.S., the second largest carbon emitter in the world, plans to pull out of the Paris Agreement.
That means record heat, more drought in some places, torrential rains and floods in other places, sea level rising, drowning coastal areas. The world will be a mess.
We're all going to die because we pulled out of a non-binding agreement that nobody else is going to obey anyway. Fareed Zakaria looking at the larger foreign policy complexion of this over on CNN. This is apocalyptic to him as well.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world. It's nothing short of that. The irresponsibility of this act is breathtaking because the Paris Climate Accords are actually extraordinarily flexible. They do not dilute American sovereignty. They allow every country to make its own plans. That's why countries that have jealously guarded their sovereignty, like China, like India, like Russia, have all signed on.
Oh, all of a sudden, Russia's good now, and apparently China's going to actually obey this in 2030 when its deadline comes up. I'll be surprised if that happens. Other reactions, Tom Steyer, the billionaire who constantly funds Democratic and liberal candidates and mainly attack ads against Republicans on environmental issues, called it a traitorous act of war. Others have called it a death warrant for the planet, but that can't possibly be the case because Van Jones already decided back in March that when Trump signed an executive order rolling back the Clean Power Plant regulation, that was signing a death warrant for the planet. So, Jim, the hysteria here is not surprising, but it is a little bit ridiculous.
Well, I think the example that struck me the most, Greg, was when Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, the extremely large bank on Wall Street, joined Twitter and was verified. And his first and only tweet was about how terrible this was and how terrible the president was for this. Now, I'm really hoping that the Democrats, reeling from the defeat of 2016, whether it's in this suburban district in Georgia or all the swing districts in 2018, I hope they run ads saying, even the CEO of Goldman Sachs says what Trump's doing is a bad idea. Because, most Americans might think that the CEO of Goldman Sachs has different interests than they do. And they don't actually say, wait a minute, what do I care what this guy thinks? So again, seeing this gets to, taps into much larger issues about climate change and skepticism and this attitude of a lot of environmentalist celebrities and political figures who expect everyone else to make giant sacrifices through higher energy bills, but who they themselves are not willing to make any kind of significant sacrifice, i.e. their luxury yachts, their private jets, their giant homes. The example I cited in the Morning Jolt today, Greg, that I particularly enjoyed was the 11,000 square feet mansion of Tom Friedman that he said he and his wife had built because otherwise the land would have been built for like a dozen smaller houses. And that would have a terrible carbon emission, Greg. So he's willing to make the sacrifice of living in that mansion to prevent those other people from living in those homes because, you can't let the unwashed leave the oven on. That'd be bad. So this all seems like an enormous amount of virtue signaling and smug preening and things like that. And I don't think it actually persuades people. So if the environmentalists really want to change people's minds, I think they have to take a different approach. And I think they have to lead by example, demonstrate sacrifices, and maybe have a little bit more faith in humanity and the technological advances that have driven us to this point. But that's another discussion for another time. Those are our good martinis. I made a reference to Georgia, didn't I, Greg?
You did. Let's move on to the bad martini, although it has a nice silver lining, Jim. Apparently the bad martini in Georgia 6 that we did several days ago with John Ossoff up 7 points was, in fact, an outlier. That's the good news. The bad news is he still seems to be ahead, although by a much smaller margin. This is from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Democrat John Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel are separated by less than 2 points in a poll released Thursday by WSB-TV. The latest survey showing the June 20 runoff for Georgia's 6th district is going to be a nail-biter. The poll showed Ossoff leading Handel 49.1 to 47.6. It's a point and a half. Well within the poll's 4% margin of error. Only 3% were undecided, a sign of the total saturation of the race for the suburban Atlanta district. More than $36 million has been spent on the election, the costliest U.S. House contest in history, over what both parties increasingly see as a must-win contest. Other tidbits buried in the crosstabs: Ossoff leads Handel by nearly 2-1 among voters under 39 and also has a sizable advantage in the 40 to 64 age block. The advantage, though, is reversed with voters over 65, which is the most reliable voting block. So, Jim, looks like most minds have been made up. Too close to call for the most part. It's probably going to come down to turnout, which is probably the worst cliche ever when it comes close to Election Day.
Yeah, just because it's a cliche doesn't mean it's not accurate. So don't hit yourself too hard, Greg. Yeah, this is looks like a coin flip right now. There's a chance that Republican will win, and the GOP will say, okay, once again we have another special election where Democrats think they're going to win and they don't, and we're not in that bad shape. The Democrats would undoubtedly fume if they felt like, here we go again. We came close, but we don't actually win the seat. Keep in mind, though, that yes, this was a 1-point race in 2016, the presidential race, but Romney won here 61 to 38. Very similar margin for McCain. Back, George W. Bush was winning 68%, 70%. This was a pretty darn Republican seat for a really long time, and obviously Tom Price had a good run of winning re-election by safe margins. So is it an overwhelmingly Republican seat? No, but this is the sort of suburban district that Republicans used to win pretty easily. And to see it neck and neck, maybe it's because it's a special election, or maybe the Trump, brand isn't going to work the same way as the traditional Republican brand did all across the country. And if you take away the advantage of incumbency, maybe Republicans are going to have some troubles in places like this. It's not quite a reason for a full-fledged, man your battle stations, turn on all the drudge sirens, DEFCON 1 level crisis of the 2018 midterms, but there's reason for Republicans to be worried. Now, the intriguing thing is that you notice that neither candidate is actually focusing on Trump. So it's interesting. I can't tell whether this is a Trump effect in this district, or whether it's John Ossoff talking about how much he wants to reduce government waste and basically running nothing like a traditional Democrat. But either way, this is when you got nearly unlimited funds, you can make a big splash here. So my thinking is that if Ossoff actually wins, you're going to see the Democrats convinced that the 2018 landslide is coming their way. Now, if they do that, maybe that'll be good. Maybe they'll get Republicans to be, aware to the possibilities of a bad 2018 midterm. And maybe they'll kind of wake up and realize the Trump presidency could look really, really different if the Democrats take the House in 2018.
Absolutely. We just saw the GOP chairwoman, Romney McDaniel, yesterday saying if Republicans want to do pretty well in the 2018 midterms, doing what you promised in the campaign would be a good way to shore up your support, keep your base happy, and have a better shot of holding the majorities in the House and Senate. So that's on some issues easier said than done. But what is John Ossoff's hook? Is it just his rhetoric on fighting waste? Because we almost had the banjo playing congressman from Montana until he lost to Gianforte. So what's his shtick?
He proposed, right? So finally, the poor long-suffering girlfriend of 12 years gets a ring on her finger. So God bless the Ossoffs for that. I hope they live a happy life in the private sector. But he's trying to run as, look, I'm not like those other Democrats. I'm not like Nancy Pelosi. I'm a centrist Democrat. And as I think, part of the problem, one of the reasons Democrats have the problem that they're in is they built their majority in 2006 on the backs of the Heath Schulers of the world. And then once Democrats had all control of government, of the House, the Senate, and the presidency in 2009, 2010, everybody had to basically jump on the grenade and make these tough votes and vote for cap and trade and vote for Obamacare and make all these decisions, vote for stimulus and all, basically vote like liberals the way Nancy Pelosi wanted them to. And lo and behold, in a lot of parts of the country that did not play well, and there's a decent amount of skepticism to dispel for Democrats. But looking at where Ossoff is, maybe he's on the verge of doing that.
Wow. All right, let's move on to the crazy martini now, Jim. And let's talk about a story that we have blissfully avoided for most of the week, but we can no longer. That, of course, Kathy Griffin, the not very funny comedian who was part of CNN's New Year's Eve coverage until she got fired this week following the photo spread, which showed her holding the bloody severed head of Donald Trump. And, of course, a lot of condemnation across the board. She issued a half-hearted apology, and now it turns out that she really wasn't sorry at all, because here's what's happening today, if it hasn't already happened. Kathy Griffin is holding a press conference Friday to complain about the bullying from the Trump family that she has endured following the release of a photo spread showing the comedian holding up a bloodied head of President Trump. Lisa Bloom, the daughter of famed feminist litigator Gloria Allred, and Griffin's newly hired lawyer, made the shocking announcement on Twitter. Bloom says that she and Griffin will announce the true motivation behind the photo shoot. In addition to that, they're going to talk about just how cruel the Trump family has been in response. Here's the cruelty in response to a photo of someone in your family being depicted as being beheaded, Jim. This is Donald Trump himself. Kathy Griffin should be ashamed of herself. My children, especially my 11-year-old son Barron, are having a hard time with this. Sick. Statement from Melania Trump was, as a mother, a wife, and a human being, that photo is very disturbing. When you consider some of the atrocities happening in the world today, a photo opportunity like this is simply wrong and makes you wonder about the mental health of the person who did it. I believe Donald Jr. Had a statement as well, but Jim, I'm not sure any of that amounts to bullying, certainly in response to what Griffin did.
It's a fair question. I think it was, Jenna Jameson, known for adult entertainment, who had said earlier this week that if Kathy Griffin really wanted to shock us, she'd say something funny. She's a comedian who does not actually do anything. Like, she was on that Brooke Shields sitcom that was on the air for like 10 minutes on NBC decades ago. And since then, she's kind of been this, like the political provocateur who doesn't actually provoke anything. She's like, you're kind of left like, what does she actually do? I remember there was this controversy. She had done some sort of VH1 had done some sort of concert for the troops. And in addition to having all the musical stars there, they brought Kathy Griffin out to do stand-up. And she did this whole set about Sarah Palin's daughter. And people argued about the tastefulness and, did the jokes cross the line. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, you've got a audience of enlisted men in front of you who just want to have a good time and are there to see, musicians and singing and all that stuff. So one, who books Kathy Griffin? Two, and she's doing all of her Bristol Palin material? What? There's this is odd, odd hyper politicization that goes around her. But so then it was really fascinating to see she decides to do this photo shoot, and it seemed to be, oh, all you liberals think you're mad at Trump? No. Let me show you how mad I am. This very much of, I'm gonna top what you did. So far from that, I'm so angry at Trump, I'm posing like ISIS. How do you like them apples? And unsurprisingly, people didn't like those apples. I have no problem. I think, some folks on the right aren't giving CNN quite enough credit to, say, you know what, that's it. That's the end of the New Year's Eve with Anderson Cooper in Times Square routine. Anderson Cooper issued a statement saying he thought it was appalling and inappropriate. I think for all of our complaints that nobody on the left ever gets rebuked for going too far, I think there was a pretty widespread rebuking of her, not counting all the people who were just stunned to learn that Griffin was still alive. And so I guess we shouldn't be surprised she's going to play the victim. This is kind of their playbook. This is, if you're truly a narcissist and if you're truly enormously self-absorbed, you're really not capable of recognizing why other people might be offended or bothered by this. I think, John Podhoretz had a very good observation about this, that what this also tells us that Griffin travels in circles where not a single person would say, no, that's a terrible idea and you shouldn't do it. This is basically declaring that you want to brutally murder the president of the United States. It undoubtedly evokes images of ISIS execution videos, and that's not something anybody should want to be associated with. It's kind of fascinating to watch the downward spiral of this. And I think it was Noah Rothman who said earlier this week that Twitter is probably not healthy for people, that if you've got a mental problem, it probably exacerbates that by having this vast audience that will reward these types of gestures. We do all of our diehard jokes around here. It's a little weird to watch the Lethal Weapon movies now. and look at Mel Gibson and Danny Glover and ask which one went nuttier. We're in this era of celebrities kind of going crazy, and kind of like we get to watch it live on through social media. And I don't know if it's just the matter of, I don't know if it's technology and social media. I don't know if it's the pressures of modern fame. I don't know exactly what's driving it, but I feel like we're watching a whole bunch of people who really just need to sit down to talk to a therapist or a caring friend or somebody like that. And when they say, it was not just Griffin, but Jim Carrey says he has fantasies of murdering the president all the time. That's really troubling. You really shouldn't be running around fantasizing about murdering people. That's not psychologically healthy. That might get you a visit from the U.S. Secret Service, but you really shouldn't be filled with murderous rage at a lot of people in your life. And we, seem to have forgotten that. So my closing thought for this weekend is don't go through life with murderous rage, people. It's probably not worth it.
Jim is here as
Exactly.
Jim is here as a public service, not just as an expert political analyst and humorist. That type of insight you just can't get anywhere else than the Three Martini Lunch. Don't go around with murderous rage.
There you go.
Jim, I hope your weekend is murderous rage free. I hope mine is as well, and we'll reconvene on Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and tune in again on Monday for the next Three Martini Lunch. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Hurry into Old Navy tomorrow and Sunday to get jeans for the whole family on sale. Just $15 for adults, $12 for kids. Plus, starting tomorrow, redeem your Super Cash to save even more at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Super Cash valid 6/3 to 6/11. Jeans valid 6/3 to 6/4. Select styles only. Hurry into Old Navy tomorrow and Sunday to get jeans for the whole family on sale. Just $15 for adults, $12 for kids. Plus, starting tomorrow, redeem your Super Cash to save even more at Old Navy and OldNavy.com. Super Cash valid 6/3 to 6/11. Jeans valid 6/3 to 6/4. Select styles only.